I entered the world of F&B completely by mistake. I remember eating that with butter for the first time and I was like, what the fuck? Bread could taste like this? That had so much fucking butter in it, it will give you a fucking heart attack right there and then. You want me to do a section in a 1 Michelin star restaurant? Are you fucking crazy or what? What the fuck am I doing with my life? Not a pity sob story at all. Nothing. But it is what it is. It's just nice. So this is called a We Chef podcast. So AOC, a We Chef. Why the name? Well, obviously I'm a chef. And to be honest, I wanted to call it We Chef, but that was already taken. And then, I thought about the name, even though for me it doesn't really matter what the name is. But a We Chef really resonated with me. The fact that I think it, I'm classically French trained. All the restaurants I've worked in are mostly French restaurants. And I'm a chef, and the pronunciation of We Chef, the slang of it, I think it's relatively cool. It's common, people know it. People who have Western backgrounds anyways in cooking would have had said it or had it said to them multiple times. For people who aren't in the industry, it's kind of catchy. So yeah, this is episode 1 of the We Chef. First of all, none of this is scripted. I'm literally sitting in Modal Studio in Tonglor on a Friday afternoon and just talking to a camera. Never done this before. I haven't really planned. I'm not really a podcast consumer myself. I mean, the only one that I really do listen to non-religiously, like whenever I have time, is, The Diary of a CEO. But I did do it because I have a passion for storytelling. I won't go into the gist of it again. I've already explained earlier about why I'm doing this. So yeah, it's just my thoughts. Eventually, I will be having guests on. Some are chefs, some are restaurateurs, some are sommeliers, some are passionate people of the community, the F&B community, which is, I think, a lot deeper than a lot of people give it credit for. You have the farmers, the agriculture, the logistics, the distribution, branding, design, production. It's so in depth. And what I love about this industry is that it touches almost all fields. And I'll be inviting people in that I find curious, that I respect, that I admire, that, selfishly I want to learn from. Steal 2 hours, 3 hours of their precious time, come here, record it, ask some interesting conversations from a chef's point of view, obviously, and see what they say. I feel like doing that over a period of time will be a really valuable personal growth for me, with the knowledge shared, I'm sure, and to share that with you guys, for you to have the same access to it. I think that's why I would do this. So today, first episode, I think we should talk about myself, how I got here, who I am, why I am the way that I am. Maybe narcissistic, and I am a little narcissistic, I'll admit that. And but I think it's important for the viewers to get to know me. So, as always, I really want this podcast to be a temple of honesty. I do think that being honest and not fluffed, no marketing bullshit, no PR, and unscripted. I really, really genuinely want to just film a genuine conversation between 2 or 3 people. And that's what this podcast, the content is. And I want it to be real. I want it to be authentic. I want it to be genuine. I don't want it to be some sort of like, as a lot of content creators will do, or the directors or production house, be like, oh yeah, we should try to do this for this, you get more visibility. I don't give 2 fucks about visibility. I really don't. It's not why. Intrinsically, I'm doing this podcast for me. And I feel like it's interesting enough to share. That's it. That's really it. Paying for it myself. It's something that I really just want to put out there in the world, and it's something that I'm comfortable enough in my own skin that it makes other people uncomfortable, that I'm okay with putting myself out there, because that's the biggest jump, right? When you do stuff like this, really putting yourself out there, and being authentic and just throwing it into the world, and then be open to get judged. I mean, regardless if you do it or you don't do it, you're gonna judge you anyways. For the first episode, of a We Chef podcast, let's start with myself. So, as I said earlier, I'm 100% Thai. I was born in Nakhon Si Thammarat. I moved around a lot as a kid. My parents divorced when I was like 2, I think. My birth father, who I know of him, but we don't really have a relationship, even though ironically, we don't have a relationship, but I see him once a month. So my mom, Suri Russell, hi mom. let's go back to birth. So born in a conglomerate, that's a whole nother story in itself. My mom, her appendix was infected, so I was actually a very difficult birth to have because she wasn't, her pancreas was infected. She had to have the pancreas removed while I was inside. And I'm not sure why, but she always told me that she wasn't allowed to go on painkillers because I was really, really, it was quite far along. And I'm not sure how much of that is true. I never checked, but yeah, apparently it was a very painful procedure because she had to remove the pancreas with me inside. It's something, that I think it's, my mom is my biggest inspiration. The shit she's gone through in life, the journey she's had, it's her story to tell. I'm not going to sit here and talk about her life because, one, it's not my story to share, it's hers. And she's one of the strongest women I know. The shit she's had to deal with the background she's had. It may sound dramatic, but my mom's family came from poverty. This is not a sob story. I don't want anyone pitying me. I've had a fucking amazing life. I had an amazing childhood. My parents love each other. Like, it's not a pity sob story at all. Nothing. But it is what it is. It's just facts. I remember growing up, and my mom, she grew up really poor, and then her wealth grew by like 100 folds at the right place at the right time with a lot of hard work, obviously. And yeah, she managed to go from being the youngest out of 9 kids in a Muslim Thai family, the first one in her family to go to university. She graduated and didn't even pick up her degree. And from there on, she went to grow on to have multiple businesses, start a family, and was able to send her kids to private school, 3 of them, and moved to the UK. And to do that in the space of like 20 years, to go from where she was to that, I find it so inspiring. And I never really knew the value of that until much older. I never really knew how hard life was for us. And the lucky thing for me was that I started from the bottom. So even though when I was saying earlier, like, I shared a bed with like 6 cousins, we fought over the pillows, we didn't really have there was no aircon. We had one fan that moved around. We those traditional beds with like the mosquito nets was that was what I lived on. The water we used in the house was from big wells that we collected during the rainy season. And yeah, it was a shack, absolute shack. I can't wait to go visit there. I haven't been to Nakhon Si Thammarat in fucking years. Bak Panang, that's the town in the province of Nakhon Si Thammarat that I'm from. I moved to Bangkok for a little bit to live with my father's side before they got divorced, and then I moved to Krabi. Nakhon Si Thammarat, I have some memories there, but I moved to Krabi a little bit, and that's when my memories, like I was solidified with my memories there more. And then after that, I lived in PP for a little bit as well. My family had business there, and then my mom met who I call my dad. So he's my stepdad. He's not my biological dad, but I call him dad because he's taken care of me since I was 2-3 years old, and they remarried when I was about 6-7, if my memory serves me correctly. And then he officially adopted me when I was about 9 or 10. That's why my last name is Russell. And then I moved to Phuket, went to international school. Well, I went to a Thai school called Samut, which is still a private Thai school. And then I moved to PINS, which was the first American curriculum international school, which is why my Dek Inter, they'll call it international twang. And then I think I remember one day vividly that I came home to my dad and I said something in English. So I started learning English only when I was like 7 or 8. People think that I've been speaking English, and that's why my grammar is so shit. And my writing is terrible. But I started only learning English at the age of 8 or 9. I think I went in grade 3 or 4. My first English-speaking teacher was Canadian. So I went home one day to my dad, Phil, and I said to him, "How you doing, Dad?" "Oh, I can't do it now." It was something I said in such a strong American accent that he was like, "Fuck this," because he's British, he's English. So he's like, "Okay, you know what? We're gonna take you out of this American school and put you in the British school, which was the Dulwich College back then." So yeah, I went to Dulwich College in Phuket, and then I moved to the UK when I was 15. Yeah, right after GCSEs, ended my A-levels in the UK on the Isle of Wight. And that's where I entered the world of F&B. So when I turned 16 in the UK, you could start working legally at 16. And because I was a student, even though I only had a Thai passport, I was able to work. I had a national insurance number. I was adopted. So I think I entered the world of F&B completely by mistake. Growing up in Thailand, you eat. Eating is a normality, is a norm. The word culture isn't even appropriate for how much we love food. It is the oxygen that we live and breathe. When you greet someone, you say, "How are you?" It's "Kin Khao Yang," especially in the South. So food was always around, and I've never really been aware of the whole food world I've never really been curious. It was just something I ate. It was something I loved to do. I was a great eater. I was a fantastic eater. I still am. It was never really a world that was curious to me because I had no idea that it took people, a whole bunch of people, and a lot of effort to make food. It was so readily available in Thailand that we take it for granted. We still do. People who go down the street, กินก๋วยเตี๋ยว order a kapow for 50-60 baht or 45 baht back in the day or ไก่ทอดหาดใหญ่ and ข้าวเหนียว and it's like when you are just a consumer like I was a very naive consumer only when that's taken away from you like it was when I moved to the Isle of Wight. By the way, the Isle of Wight is a tiny countryside island that I love and adore, and I grew up in Phuket, so the two worlds the two islands, even though they're both surrounded by sea, could not be more different. It was like แบบว่าบ้านนอกชิบหายอะ it was a huge culture shock. And I visited the UK I think twice before I moved. I went 2 summers at the age of 11 and then again at 13. Very, very thankful for that. But yeah, moving there was a whole another league. So I moved there the first 6 months. I stayed with my aunts, Auntie Joe, and then after that they encouraged me to get a part-time job to pay for cinema tickets, to pay for beer. So that's how I started working in F&B. Even though I was always surrounded by F&B. My parents owned a travel agency back in the day, pp.com. All my friends in Dulwich had their own hotels or they had restaurants. I was always surrounded by F&B. Phuket is an F&B haven. It was the birthplace of some amazing hotel brands. The Aman was originally there. Anantara, if I'm not mistaken, is also from there. You have it's a world-class destination. But I never realized that it could be a whole world that I belonged in. And so my first job was actually at the age of 16. It was ironically in a private hotel on the Isle of Wight called the Priory Bay. And it was where my parents got married. So it was really weird. I worked there by complete accident. One of my very close friends, Hattie Jenkins, she started working there as a breakfast waitress, and then she just asked me to tag along. And I'll never forget the first day I went to the hotel. I was shocked that the kitchen looked like the kitchen. I've never seen a professional kitchen before. I had never seen a coffee station before. I had never seen a pantry before. I had never seen anything before. It was all new. So my first job was actually a breakfast waiter. I was serving people. And the fact that I was very confident, I was I had always been okay with speaking to people, luckily. I had spoken English, even though I looked like a complete foreigner. I was the only foreigner there. I was the only Asian in the whole, I think, 100 staff member, 120 staff member. And, the customers were always curious. The question was, where are you from? Oh, why is your English so good? And, I really, really enjoyed it. Honestly, love at first sight. I really, really enjoy it. And I have to explain something to you, for those who know me, my dear friends. Also, if any of my friends from BIS is watching this, you guys will come up in this podcast quite a fair bit, so beware. Also to my family, I'm really sorry. You guys will come up too. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm keeping it as honest as possible. To my ex-girlfriends, you guys will probably come up. I'm not sure yet. And to my dear wife, Michelle, and my business partner, Pook and Julian, yeah, you guys definitely will come up a lot. But anyways, going back. When I went in to be a waiter, I really, really felt like I belonged. And the thing is, you have to understand, I was the laziest fucking kid in high school. I remember one time, my arts teacher in Dulwich, she got so frustrated that I didn't do any homework, that one day she literally asked me to go home, write my name down on an A4 piece of paper, and be like, this is your homework. And as you can imagine, I didn't even fucking do that. I didn't even do that. I don't know what it is. Maybe my ADHD, maybe my procrastination, which is associated to my ADHD. I'm just like, if my heart's not into something, I just will not do it, regardless of how easy and minute the task is. But when I started working in the restaurant, serving people, talking to people, there was just something about it that I loved. And maybe it was just, it's a different type of job. It's I would say because it's intrinsic. Even though it is a job, you're doing it because you like doing it, it was easy. There was no extra energy needed to give. It was just automatic. Talking to people, waking up early. I think the breakfast shift started at like 6. I've never gotten up that early before. The only time I got up that early was when we had swim camp before school, which was torturous. But yeah, it was the first time that I felt doing work that didn't feel like work. So that's where my curiosity for the F&B industry began. When I was there as a waiter, we had an old chef. We had the previous chef there, and a lot of the food was like, it was not to be judgmental to them at all. A lot of stuff was bought in for efficiency. Nothing was really made in house. So I wasn't really curious about the kitchen. And if I'm being honest, the food that we served back then was very average. And for me, I have a Thai palate. I chop like really intense flavors. How we see, and the food in the Isle of Wight in 2006, it was fucking shit. There was nothing there. It was absolutely no restaurant, which is weird because the produce on the Isle of Wight is fucking amazing. It really, really is. We're very famous for our wild garlic. There's an amazing garlic farm there. Our seafood's fantastic. The local crab is brilliant. The local blue lobster is some of the best I've had anywhere. It's up there with Brittany, in my opinion. And the macro is fantastic as well. But yeah, regarding restaurants, it was just, and also the way that the food tasted, it was just, everything was bland. Coming from Thailand, where everything's intense, saltiness, sweetness, spiciness, everything's fresh. You always refresh any namjim with lime. There was always a punch of flavor. It was never interesting. So I worked there for about 6 months as a breakfast waiter, and we had a change of chef in the kitchen. So Alexis Gauthier, my first chef that I worked under, he and the hotel owner had a restaurant called Rusion in Chelsea, which was a 1 Michelin star restaurant. One of the first classic French restaurants to have a star back in the day. He took over as a consultant for the hotel. And that's when my curiosity for the kitchen began. I remember like it was yesterday, coming in for a shift. It was during the summer, and they were testing out a white baguette, a simple white baguette that they do. And Carlos, my first direct mentor, Carlos, he was making the bread. And it was the first time that I think they made bread at the hotel, but it was the first time that they made a bread that I was super curious about. And I remember someone gave me the baguette. I think it might have been Hattie. She stole some from the kitchen. And I remember eating this French baguette. And it was the first time in my fucking life that I had bread that I actually liked. Because growing up in Phuket, the only bread that we ate was frozen, defrosted, microwave. And I never got why people like bread. I'm a rice man. We all are. And when you have shitty bread for the first time and you compare that to rice, you're like, how the fuck is this a cultural thing? How is it good? But then when I had a freshly made baguette for the first time, and I think it was a similar recipe because Alexis worked in with Alain Ducasse in Monaco in the Louis Cannes, and it was just, I never forget it. The crunch, there was a sweetness to it because they put sugar in it. The crust, the fact that it was shaped, literally looked like an arrow. It was like an oval shape with thin ends. So you had different textures from the tip where it's like a bit burnt, it's crunchy, and then when you get to the middle, it's a bit softer, more airy. And the way that it looked, it was fresh bread, so it looked really artisan. And I remember eating that with butter for the first time, and I was like, what the fuck? Bread could taste like this? Bread could taste like this? Bread could be this good? Holy shit. And that's where my curiosity for the kitchen perked. So I was still 16. I was still doing my A-levels. I was like every kid. I think every kid, or I don't know, but I could definitely speak for a lot of people, especially even from my school. We don't know what we wanted to do. I was like every single fucking international student that had a very privileged, not always, but after the age of like 13, 14, went to privates. I went from sharing a bed with 6 cousins to fucking going to private school, living in a villa with a pool by the lake, and having 2 maids within the space of like 7 years. That growth of wealth, and for me to live through it, and it only went up, was something I will never ever take for granted. Still to this day, it keeps me grounded. It makes me I hate the word entitlement because it's something that's an issue with our society nowadays. I'm so fortunate that I was able to do it in that order. If it had been the other way around, if I was born into like a rich family and then their wealth, deteriorated, and I had to go from living in a pool villa house by the lake with 2 maids to sharing a bed with my cousins, that would have been torturous. But the fact that I got to see that in such a short space amount of time, and looking back on it and reflecting on it, that is the pillar and the reason why I do everything that I do. Every time I have a hard day or whatever, or I come across an obstacle, I look back and I'm like, nothing will compare to that. I always have something to revert to mainly my mom, that she had passed. And, I think of her every time I have a hard time, because like the shit that she had to go through to get us, the kids, to where we are is so inspiring. And I'm so fortunate grateful, blessed that I am able to be the byproduct of that. You know, it's an amazing story. It really, really is. And it fills me with so much gratitude every single day to know that the childhood I had was amazing. I am privileged than a lot of people, but I'm so more privileged than most. Most. And not just in terms of like wealth, in terms of everything. My family's really close-knit. I have a group of amazing childhood friends. Gavin, Sven, Man, Sa, Jimmy, Charlie Jones, who's also a chef, by the way. Yeah. And, you know, I'm so blessed, honestly. This is the reason I think that this podcast can be beneficial. It's a double-edged sword. When you have someone who from the outside looking in has success or whatever you want to call wherever I am in my life. Complete life. I'm married. I have a business, multiple. I'm financially secured. I am on my way to have enlightenment spiritually. I'm starting this podcast. I have a roof over my head. I have a loving family. They're all healthy. But I know that this moment won't last forever. I know that shit's coming my way. I'm fully aware of that. And I'm fully aware that right now, right this very moment, I'm fulfilled. I'm happy. My cup is, as they say in the content world, my cup's full. So why not share it? And I know that along the way that I keep growing, keep learning, things will change. Shit times will come. And I will be there to share it with you guys. And that's what I want to tell people, that it's nothing lasts forever. Good and bad times. It will come and go. And that's part of life. The cliche is like life's up and down. I don't view it as up and down. It's wide. You know, the things that we chase in life sometimes could be very... For me, I'm not really a big believer of chasing happiness. I don't understand, logically speaking, what that means and how you define that. Because I don't believe happiness exists. I think the word fulfillment is a lot more important to chase. Happiness is almost like a byproduct of being fulfilled. That's how I see it. And fulfillment is great, or what I like to measure my own chase is that, because I think that fulfillment is something that you can actively look out for. And the great thing about fulfillment is that it needs to be challenging. There is no such thing in life that is fulfilling, that isn't challenging. And that's what I love. I almost look for it. I know myself well enough. I have enough self-awareness, experience, and I'm blessed enough to know that you need to be able to switch the tough times that you have into something really, really positive. And then from that, you can be fulfilled. And then from that fulfillment, you can be happy. It's a byproduct. You know, it's a really, really is a byproduct. I know that in our line of work, in our society, and I'm only going to say it as a reflection of my own personal experience, I'm an expert in nothing. Really, nothing. I'm okay at cooking. I know how to cut onions and carrots and put it in a pot and then, you know, sell it to people and then make jokes about it. But I'm an expert at nothing. But I'm just a curious passenger of life. So going back to the reason that I'm switched as a chef is that one day after having the baguette, the next week they made some mashed potatoes. So it was mashed potato. It wasn't really mashed. It was pomme puree. So it was more butter than potato, which is the secret, as you know. There's a tagline that it's actually a name of my football fantasy. No butter, no life. I love that. I love that. I love that. No butter, no life. Anyways, so when I had the pomme puree with, I think it was a chicken wing, and that was a scrap from the sauce with some chicken jus, that was when I decided to become a chef. As a Thai person, I had never had anything like that in my entire life. And it was just a roasted mid-wing that they used for the sauce. So it wasn't even like it had bones in it and shit, but it was like roasted to the point of no return. And then you had this pomme puree. So that was literally the smoothest mashed potato ever that had so much fucking butter in it. It will give you a fucking heart attack right there and then. And then there was this jus. I've never had real jus. So jus is, for those that don't know, it's a terminology of like reduced sauce of like any meat. So, you know, a duck jus is just basically a stock made out of duck that you just reduce down. And I would say it's a fancy name to call a reduced meat jus sauce. So there was a chicken jus that was reduced down, and it was emulsified with butter. So you see more butter. And I think that dish was probably 60% butter and 40% everything else. But that dish, I remember it always as that dish is the dish that made me decide that I should be a chef. So what does every 17-year-old kid do who's still in school? So when I was in school, so going back to the reason why, so I'm like a lot of other international kids. we are lucky enough to go to international school. We have a pretty comfortable life. We are surrounded by people, just because of the fees of the school, are surrounded by cultures and communities who are obviously, their parents have financial success. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to send them to school. So that puts you like in a bracket, I feel, of like the top 5%, even less than that, maybe top 2-3%. And what it does is I feel like it creates a lot of pressure for kids who go to international school, especially in Thailand, because private schools elsewhere, in my opinion, like in the UK, if you go to a private school, it's not that big of a deal. It's still a very privileged thing to have, but it's not the same. Like the disparity of wealth in Thailand is just so much more extreme than the disparity of wealth in developed European countries. So I feel like the pressure that, well, maybe the pressure I put on myself, and I could only speak on my own behalf, is that we don't know what the fuck to do. So being Thai, growing up in a place where F&B thrives, what did I do? I did what every kid does. I applied for hospitality management at university because I didn't know what else to do. And, when I was still the waiter, and you have to apply a year in advance, right? So you applied so I applied when I arrived, essentially. I applied for 5 universities. I got into 3 out of my 5. I fucked up my grades so bad. But one uni still accepted me. I won't name the uni, but one uni still accepted me even though my UCAS points wasn't up. Oh my God. And I remember thinking to myself, like, why the fuck am I going to uni? That chicken and mashed potato dish, it's so fucking amazing. Fuck this. I want to learn how to do that. And in Thai cultures, as you guys know, having, especially my mom, having your child get educated privately, get educated abroad, and actually graduate abroad is like, in terms of like Thai society, is like the putting them on a pedestal. Like they've succeeded as a parent. And I always remember contemplating that, knowing that if I go to university, I would make my parents really, really proud. And I always envisioned, her coming to my graduation ceremony and then telling her that, she did it. She was able to take some dick from Pak Panang Nakhon Thamarat to like graduating in English university, whatever, regardless of whatever degree it was. And then I remember the other side of me was like, am I doing this for myself? Is it really something I see myself doing? So I was a foreign student. I had to pay foreign fee. And luckily because of that, because I had to pay a foreign fee, I decided to take a gap year, deferred year. So then I put a university as an option. So by then I had already worked at Priory Bay for about a year and a half. I had done 1.5 seasons there as a waiter. I was still only a waiter. And there was 6 months before I finished school. I decided, you know what, fuck this. I am going to go into the kitchen. I remember it very clearly, I think, near Christmas time. So when they were not that busy. And I had no idea of the kitchen world. None. So what did I do? I wore a suit. I wrote a letter. And I remember printing out the letter and giving it to Carlos, the head chef that was there then. And he looked me up and down. And he was like, what the fuck are you wearing? And I was like, I'm here for an interview. I would like to apply to be a chef in your kitchen. Or at least get some experience. And he's like, yeah, of course. Just fucking get change. And that was it. Literally 10 minutes later, I was in my Chef White's cutting fruits for the breakfast station in a prestigious countryside hotel on the Isle of Wight. I could not fucking believe it. I thought there was like a test or a course you had to take. I thought what everyone thought, I was like, fuck, man, like fucking hell. So there I was cutting fruits for the fruit salad station. And I was like, I can't. And I fucking loved it. Honestly, to hold a knife for the first time in the kitchen and be given a job, the feeling was surreal. I couldn't believe it. And the weird thing is, the first time that I was actually in the kitchen, I didn't realize how hot it was. It was fucking hot. It was so hot. And this is in the UK. This was already in the UK. And it was during winter. And then after that, I realized that it was so fast-paced. People were swearing. There was things going around. And, even though as a waiter, you see the past. You see the chef screaming on the past and stuff like that. But when you're in it, everything just goes so much faster. For me, and it did anyways. And then the weirdest thing was all the kitchen staff were all men. And some of them were they were mates as a waiter. I went to drink beer with them and all this stuff. So I knew most of the kitchen team. They're all hot guys. But then to see 12 grown men running around like their fucking life depended on it, just to put fucking fluffy omelets with some chives on a toast. It was bizarre. And I loved it. It was so contrasting. You had one side, which was like a military brigade. And then the next thing you know, they're like putting delicate like things on a plate to serve to eat. The great thing about the kitchen, or the first thing that I had, was like everyone came from such weird backgrounds, and it was the first time that I felt like I belonged. I never really felt like I belonged anywhere, and it was the first time I belonged. Even though I'm full Thai, because I grew up internationally, I didn't really feel Thai. There was all the real Thais who came from Bangkok, who were Chinese Thai, who were went to Thai schools, and my Thai was so shit. And when I went to Penn's for like 2.5 years, our compulsory Thai lessons, was watching a Thai cartoon. I stopped learning Thai for 2 years when I was there, and that's why my reading and writing in Thai was so terrible that it still is now. And also I wasn't the ลูกครึ่ง I wasn't a full European. I wasn't แบบว่าฝรั่ง I wasn't ลูกครึ่ง I wasn't ฝรั่ง I was like in the middle. I was like a bit gray. I was like a bit like the brown boy that isn't really a brown boy, the Thai guy who isn't really a Thai guy, the เด็ก inter who's not anywhere. And no one made me feel that way. It was just how I always see myself and viewed myself growing up in Phuket. But the kitchen, I remember it night and day. I looked around, you had someone from Poland, who was, I'm sure he was escaping something. And then you had, we had the Spanish head chef, and you had 3-4 British guys who were two of them were from the island. So Jack and Alex, dear friends, and they were the ones who really encouraged me to take the step and go into the kitchen. And then, you just had like this team of misfits running around to make food. Homemade, fresh food for people to eat and enjoy. And the labor of love that goes into everything, and this is when the hotel switched. So we started making everything in-house. The scone was in-house. The jams were in-house. The bread was in-house. Like Carlos and Alexis, they switched the whole thing up. And it was everything was made from like buying it to in-house now. And it was just an amazing feeling. Right there and then, I knew that I had to put my mother's dreams, that even though by the way, she never pressured me. Never did my parents ever pressure me into doing anything. It was a dream that I knew that she wanted that I told myself. So don't take this the wrong way. And it was something that I will always remember that day and then, like still a few months away from my 17th birthday. So I right there and then decided that I wanted to do this. So I was still at school, so I asked Carlos, can I work breakfast? Because on the weekends, I would come on Friday night. I would be a waiter. And then Saturday morning, I would do the breakfast shift. And then after that, I would switch at around 10, 11. And then I would do waiter until the evening, until high tea. High tea is like food for the kids around 5 p.m. And then that was my weekend for 6 months. So before I even graduated, I had like chefing experience throughout. And then the summer came. I got my grades. They were fucking terrible. My parents were so disappointed. I was fucking disappointed. It was a shit feeling. It was really, really a shit feeling that, and the more you grow up, the more you realize that how much money it took my parents to send me to have these amazing privileged education that they have. And I felt at the time how much I wasted it. I was like, am I really going to be a chef after being educated for so long in private education? Because the society tells you that because you went to private school, you have to make something of yourself. And looking back now, the pressure I put on myself, it was unreal. It was unhealthy. And no one did it. I did it to myself. It was my own thoughts. And I know that there's kids right now going through the same thought process right now. The pressure of knowing that because you went to private school, because your parents fucking forked out however much to send you through there, because your friends and your parents' friends are accomplished people, successful people, however you want to label it, that pressure is a lot. We're great. We're so lucky that 2024, going to uni isn't the only answer and is a lot more accepted. It still probably isn't accepted as it will be in more of the future. But it's okay to not know what you're doing. Trust me. I had no fucking clue, and I'm the lucky one. And I had no clue until I knew. The only thing I will say about this, the only way you'll figure it out is not by staying in the basement playing video games. The only way you'll figure it out is by going out there and figuring it out. The word passion for me isn't something that you wake up and that you have. Very few people have born passions. So my wife, Michelle, perfect example. She knew from the get-go that she wanted to be a chef. She knew. If you looked at all her achievements in high school, by the way, she's an A-star student, fucking president of every club possible in her school. She's the fucking bipolar opposite of me. I'm like the trash. Those like rom-coms that you have? The daughter is from like a respected family. She does everything right by the book. A-class student, president of, I don't know, debate club, robotics club, president of the choir. I think she was as well. She's just a fucking overachiever. And I'm like to drop out, essentially. That's what we are. That's what we are. So she always knew that she wanted to be a chef. Went to Cordon Bleu, did everything right, graduated. It was like she even got 100% in her theories in the Cordon Bleu, one of the Cordon Bleu exams. The first one, I think, in the Cordon Bleu Australia history to have 100% in theory. And she was always like book smart. I wasn't like that at all. And it's okay. And the thing is, I just want to be a voice for those who are going into their senior years in high school in Thailand or wherever, who are putting a lot of pressure on themselves to figure it out. And also to the parents, like, it'll be fine. The worst that can happen is actually not that bad as you think it is. I say this because I saw some of my friends go through that. They really went through a struggle, and they look at my life and how I figured it out. But I didn't until I did. And passion isn't really something that you are born with or you find. I think you should be passionate about what you're good at. That's a start. If you don't know, unlike Michelle, you don't know what you want to do, you should be passionate about what you're good at. Start there. Figure it out. See if it pays. See if you can work on it. See if you can grow within it. Get very, very, very good at something. Anything. This idea of being like a do or die thing is very, very toxic. You do not need to be in the 1% of any industry. What I would recommend you to do, if you don't know what to do and you're figuring it out, is find what you're good at, get passionate about it, and then skill stack. Get good at something else. And that opens up so many areas for so many things. So this is where I got lucky. I got lucky that I knew what I wanted to do at the age of 17. By then, I had decided that I will definitely be a chef. By the way, the conversation with my parents about not going to university, they've never said it, but let's just put it this way. Within 2 weeks of me telling my parents that I wasn't going to university, that I was going to try this chefing thing out. And I asked them to send me to Cordon Bleu, London. And they said no. They said they've spent enough already on my education. This will be... And they weren't sure whether I would stick it out. And I don't blame them. When I picked up guitar, never saw it through. I picked up drumming, I never saw it through. I saw nothing through in life. I have never, even to this day now, never finished one fucking book because I just get distracted too easily. I've never even finished a book. I finished an audiobook, but I don't know if that counts. And I think because my dad put it on while we were traveling in Thailand, it was Harry Potter. So I've actually never finished a fucking book, ever. And it's just the person that I am. So when I told my parents that I was going to try the chefing thing, they were sure that I wouldn't see it through. Thank fuck that I did. When I graduated, my parents asked me for rent. And I remember it like yesterday, like I was so stubborn that I said, if you are that stuck on me not going to university and you want to charge me for... And I know they were coming from a place of good. Like they just wanted me to take responsibility. And I understand. I moved out within 48 hours. And that was it. That's how my chefing career started, officially full-time. So I was always part-time. And that was when I officially became full-time. So yeah, that is the beginning of my chef journey. I kind of want this podcast to be about, reflecting on my journey as a human being, first and foremost, who happens to be a chef. The thing is, I know that there'll be areas and moments in there where I talk about my life. But the most important thing is it's only my view. And I've said before, I'm not an expert in anything. So don't take everything I say with a pinch of salt. I am a natural exaggerator. I am a passionate storyteller. And this is what I mean by skill stacking. And I feel like a lot of it shared with a lot of people. And I'm just reflecting it through my own personal journey. And I know that if there had been something like this when I was growing up, it would put me at ease because I'm very thoughtful. I'm really in my own head. And I don't know why that is, but I'm just, I obsess about things. I really do. And I think that's what makes me a great chef. I obsess about the details. I really, really do. How do we make this chicken as moist as possible? And I'll obsess about it for months, weeks. And it's something that I love doing. And this isn't some marketing, blah, blah, blah. It's just, it is. Anyone who knows me, anyone who reads my posts online about the food, about how I construct things and whatever, they know that the obsession is there. Fortunate that it comes to me naturally. The thing is, outside, I'm obsessed about life. I'm so curious about why successful people are successful. How did they get there? What were they thinking? How did they make that decision? What was their mentality? What is their gauge? How do they keep going? What motivates them? And that's what I'm curious about. So that's what this podcast is based around that. So, started cooking. First 6 months was hell. Obviously, when you're a part-time student, the chefs are very nice to you. The team is very nice to you. You're not a full-time staff. The moment you switch from part-time kid doing cutting fruit for breakfast on a weekend to actually being a full-time responsible chef, call me, the fucking responsibility and the workload just blew up 5-6 times. I was then treated like a real chef. And yeah, the culture was, even though I loved it, even though I knew that it was intense, there was swearing, there was a bit of mild physical altercations here and there, plates thrown, pots thrown. You knew what you were getting into. And I asked for it. And I loved it. I really loved it. The camaraderie of the kitchen is nothing like I can explain. I mean, I know that I'm saying this from a very naive point of view because it's the only thing I've done. But the camaraderie of going somewhere early in the morning, prepping, cooking together, to be in a rush, even if you guys don't like each other. And the main goal at the end of the day is as chefs, we have 2 deadlines every day before service. Most places, lunch and dinner. Very few jobs have 2 deadlines every day that no matter what, no matter if there's fucking World War III outside, that you need to be ready for. Especially when you get to a certain level of prestige. It's an adrenaline rush. And the prior day, I remember, in the summer we would do 150 covers. And it would be within an hour and a half. It was like families, kids, and it was so fast paced, and it was so much fun. I was so tired. I've never been that exhausted in my life. The first 6 months, I nearly gave up so many times. I think the problem with me, which is very different to a lot of other people, is I had a choice. I knew that my parents were in the end of the other phone call, and all I needed to do was pick up my fucking Nokia 3310, I think that I had at the time, call them, and be like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's too tiring. It's too much. I can't. The option was always there. And that's what makes me staying and working even harder. Some people who are not as blessed, they don't have a choice. Especially in the olden days. Back then, as chefs, it was a second class job. No one aspired to be a chef. The likes of Marco Pio White, Anthony Bourdain, they made chefing sexy. But before that, chefing was a very low tier job. Not like now. The industry has changed so much, and we'll talk about that in other episodes. And because of that, I cried myself to sleep. It was the first time I got yelled at. And obviously self-doubt. Self-doubt was my best friend that I fucking hated, but best friend in terms of it was always there. Self-doubt accompanied me everywhere. Self-doubt accompanied me to the moment I woke up, to the moment I went in, to the moment I fucking looked at my mise en place list and I'm like, fuck, here we go again. To the moment of when we had our first check every lunch service, self-doubt was always beside me. Am I really going to be good enough to do this? Am I really invested into this passion? Did I take a jump that now I'm too embarrassed to step back on? What the fuck have I done with my life? Why didn't I go to university? My friends are all out partying now. They're having fucking freshers. And here I am fucking waking up at, 7 o'clock in the morning to cook and cut and clean and shit. What the fuck am I doing with my life? Self-doubt was always there. I can't count the times that I've cried myself to sleep. It sounds romantic. And the thing is, I don't want to glamorize the toxic culture that comes in the kitchen. It's not part of this. I'm just explaining and telling my experience. That's all I'm doing. I'm not glamorizing the negative side, the dark side that comes with F&B, especially in the kitchen. But I'm just telling you of how I felt. The thing that I would like to say, which is extremely important to people that don't know me and don't know my work life, is I was the world's worst fucking commie. I cannot tell you how many times Carlos, who I owe him a lot, we became friends after, even though, we had some struggles. I don't know how many times he calmly in the morning with his first cigarette and first espresso would take me outside nicely, touch my arms on the side, which you always do when it's comforting. And he's like, Top, are you sure you want to be a chef? Are you sure? He's like, I beg of you, are you sure? I would go to work late. I would forget shit like you would not believe. I would have fucking boxes of carrot molding in the fridge because I didn't know how to check my mise en place properly. I was late for every job I did would take fucking forever. I was, except for a few, I'm still the worst commie I've ever met. I wouldn't hire myself. Honestly speaking, I wouldn't. If 17-year-old Top showed up at Mia right now, would I hire him? maybe for shits and giggle. But if I saw how he worked, how he was half an hour late because he fucking didn't wake up from his alarm, how he was always scruffy, how he probably sometimes, you would question whether he would fucking shower that morning or not. It was like, I was not nice in many ways. I was dirty, I was scruffy, I was late, I was, in some ways a bit arrogant as well, and I was just so shit at my job. I was. And all that combined with the self-doubts, yeah, you question. And the reason I question it is because I said already, there was always an option to quit. People always talk about not quitting, you don't have this hustle porn culture, I guess. What makes it hard is when you can quit and you don't. And I think the only reason I didn't quit, as dramatic as it sounds, going back to what I said earlier, was my mom. I had to make sure, when you make decisions in life, I think people, like I have, waste so much time on pondering whether it's the right decision. And the way that I view it is, for most, not all, but for most, you can make whatever decision that your gut tells you there and then you do everything in your power to make sure that the decision you made is the right one. And that's how I have always viewed it, as much as I can within my control. And I knew, looking back, that I had made the decision to be a chef, no matter how hard it got, no matter how broke I was, no matter how much I didn't eat. Honestly, I'll send you some pictures. I fucking looked like I was on drugs. I knew that the pain of facing my mom and giving up would not be as bad as the pain that I would ever face. And that was always the baseline, the baseline. The baseline was that, I used this throughout my whole career. I really did. Even when I went on to London to work in some of the toughest restaurants, even when I, met really bad personal challenges about a breakup, which we'll get into, I'm sure, other topics. The baseline that I always refer back to is that no matter what, the worst has already passed. So I didn't give up. For 6 months, I stuck to it. And then eventually, fucking bless the gods. I'm not religious, but it's a saying anyways. I got better. I got faster. I came to work on time. I fucking showered in the morning, which was, for me, the biggest antidote. Yeah, it was very sleazy, but, this is the temple of honesty, so I will just be completely honest. Please, Michelle, please don't judge me. I was a very different man back then, It's, and, it made me grow up so much. This industry, this job that has given me so many sleepless nights made me into a man. It made me into an adult, I would say, not a man. It made me into an adult, taking responsibility for my own shit for the first time in my life. Doing laundry for the first time. I remember doing laundry for the first time in the staff house. And I was like, how the fuck do I do this? Sak paไม่เป็น here. Having no money and then being frugal about every pound, every cent. Not being able to afford food. I know that it sounds bad, but I was so stubborn that I was still living on the Isle of Wight. I remember going to visit my parents every now and then just so I can eat. Because I was too stubborn to tell them that I didn't have enough money for food. And that I always had this, guilt that they had already done enough. Even though that if I know that I told my parents, I'm running low this month, can you help me out? I'm sure that they'll always say yes. But I was so stubborn. I was like, no. I made the decision. I want to be independent. I think my first salary after tax and everything was like £960. Converted to baht, it's okay, but yeah, it was not a lot at all in the UK. And I spent most of it on cigarettes and alcohol. So that is a whole nother topic that I'll talk about later. The abuse side to everything. This EP is just probably an intro into how we get to where we are. So after that, I got better. Thank fuck. I got better. I got more trust. And, with these things in life, the momentum you have, when you start, it's like going to the gym. The moment you start to see results, there is no drug that gives you more of a confident booster than actually seeing the result. Seeing the result of, delayed gratification. And the thing about being a chef, because it is skill related. It is. It's skill related. It's just, I feel like being a chef is almost like an athlete. The amount of shit that you have to do on a daily basis, mentally and physically, and it combining, and on top of that to have 2 deadlines a day that I said earlier, there's very few jobs that demand that much. And to do all that, I know that it's attached with the prestige, and where I'm sitting now, it is a little bit, but when you do it at the very beginning, with no experience. You didn't go to culinary school. You never held a knife before. To do it from the bottom up, there were even some days that I did the pot washing because just they needed it. The drunk Polish KP would just be too drunk to work, and yeah, I would do the dishwashing. And honestly, a shout out to all the dishwashers out there. It is still by far the fucking hardest job in any restaurant. Marco Pio White famously said, in his book. Oh no, I did finish one book. Okay, I'll get to that in a minute. I did finish the only book I finished. Oh no, two books. Both are chef biographies, by the way. Anyways, yeah, Marco Pio White said in his biography, White Heat, that the KPs never get the respect that they deserve, and that is so true. That is so fucking true. Absolutely, physically, the steam, the dirtiness, the and it's just like no one ever fucking gives you any credit at all. So yeah, the point I'm making is like the skill, when you get better, you get more confidence, and that's what happened to me. And then when that confidence grew, you just love it more. You love it more. And I was the right place at the right time. Thank God Carlos, he never kicked me out. I know that a lot of other chefs would have done. And I'll always be grateful for him for that. He really, and also the team, Alex and Jack, they really, really supported me. They really, really, and the amount of times I put them in the shits, like they would give me something to weigh out. And even just weighing shit out, I would be so distracted. I would did I put salt or sugar? Fuck. Is it T45 or T55? Fuck. Like, I fucked up so much for them. And they still stuck, they still stuck it out. They still encouraged. And yeah, slowly my best friend's self-doubt started to fade away. And I remember one summer, I think it was the second summer that I worked on the Prairie Bay. So summer was always the busiest period. And it was always when we would get fucking slammed. It was a seasonal hotel. And I remember one summer just seeing my own progress as a chef, as a cook even. And I was, first time in almost 2 years in, I was like, wow, I'm actually really proud. And yeah, that's how I got good. Not got good. That's how I got to where it is. And then Alexis was, I think, he was opening a new restaurant in London, Soho, Gautier Soho. And that was how I moved to London at the age of 19. Yeah, 19. So yeah, 19, Alexis called Carlos, told him at the restaurant. I was actually the only chef from Prairie Bay Hotel to be invited to go on the opening team. And I think one of my very close friends, Mark, joined me afterward. Mark Shepard. Yeah, we were 19 and going to London back then was such a dream. To be 19 years old, to be working in a fine dining restaurant. The romance, the brand name of London to a Thai guy from Pak Panang. Fucking hell. It was like, I can finally tell my friends something that they could be proud of. I will be a chef in London working in a fine dining restaurant. O-M motherfucking G. It was huge. And I knew that I was willing to do anything and everything to make it happen, to work on it, to do something for myself. And the opportunity, I remember hearing the news, and I remember going home and I couldn't sleep that night. I think I went to bed like 4 in the morning, and I slept for like 2-3 hours, and I went back to work. And I was just so fucking excited. I was so fucking excited. I remember going there for the first time. Alexis had picked me up. He picked me up from Waterloo Station, Victoria Station, I can't remember, one of them. I had done a week's trial at Roussillon. So Roussillon was still a 1 Michelin star restaurant, and it was in Chelsea. It was and before I got the job at Gautier Soho, I had done a week's stage in London, and that was the first time I stepped foot in a Michelin star restaurant. So the 2 books that I'd finished were obviously chef books and Marco Pio White's White Heat, Gordon Ramsay Humble Pie. And the reason that I finished these 2 books is, like I said, the moment I found something interesting that I liked, I was finally undistracted and finished it. So yeah, that's how I got my foot in the door. So I remember going to Roussillon, which is it was a 1 Michelin star restaurant in Chelsea. So my dad's family is actually from Chelsea. So and they're Chelsea fans, which I am too. So I remember getting picked up from Waterloo by Alexis Gautier, who was this Michelin star chef, and I remember just gazing at him, being like, "Oh my God, you're a Michelin star chef! Wow!" And just like really excited for my trial at Roussillon, even though it was for the new restaurant. And I remember going into the kitchen, and yeah, it was just so fast paced. It was a tiny underground kitchen. So Roussillon, the restaurant was on the ground floor, and like most restaurants in London, the kitchen was underground. So actually, when you send the food, I think they send it in a lift. The synchronization between the front of house staff and the kitchen was so amazing that there was no away ticket. Gerard just knew when to call things away. Gerard was he was a partner and a chef at Cote Soho. I remember going in and then being quite shocked that it was relatively small. Being quite shocked that all the equipments were the same as anywhere else. It was still a kitchen. I had like portrayed this, like you go in and it would be like a beautiful marble top, and it it really, it was a bit disappointing to go into the kitchen. But the thing that struck me straight away was the intensity. It was just everything mattered three times as much. Every job you did in the kitchen just mattered three times as much. There was a lot more attention to detail. The food they do was quite simple. It's very simple in terms of like they do not put too many flavors on the plate. His style of cooking back then, right now, actually, Gautier Soho is a completely vegan restaurant, and that's a whole journey. Maybe I'll invite Alexis to come on the podcast in the future. Alexis, if you're down, that could be cool. Anyway, at the time, he was classically French, very simple, very vegetable focus, and it was very pure. The carrot tasted like a carrot, the peas tasted like a pea, the celeriac tasted like a celeriac. There was very minimal seasoning and changing of flavors into his dishes. But the pacing was insane. It was a busy restaurant. It was a 70, 80 seater restaurant. This was during the end of the summer, so coming into high season in London. I remember standing in the corner with my Victorinox knife, which is a very cheap entry level knife, and I just remember looking into the kitchen and then like looking at everyone and being like, they're Michelin star chefs. OM motherfucking G. There is really no way to explain what Michelin meant to me back then. It was a whole world that I never thought I belonged in. It was something that every chef, and there wasn't that many Michelin star restaurants. This was 2000 and when was this? 2009, 10, I think. Please don't hold against me about my timeline. My memory is so shit. I wake up sometimes, I look at my wife, I don't even remember her name. Okay, my memory is really bad. So if I get timelines confused, I know that the internet trolls out there will be like, oh yeah, I genuinely don't remember. 2010, yeah. It was open. Gautier Soho was open 2010. So I must have been there 6 months, 7 months prior opening. So it must have been Easter 2009. Yes, that's right. I think somewhere around there. And I remember doing a service. So I was actually meant to just go help out. I wasn't meant to be on a station. And the garnish station, notoriously, at Roussillon is the hardest because you had the regular tasting menu and then you had the vegetarian. And all the vegetarian dishes were from the garnish section. So it was the most difficult section in terms of like shit to do. In terms of position, the sauce section, which was all in one, they had meat, fish, and sauce in one section, which is quite rare for a restaurant. Normally it's segregated, but because it's such a small team, that's how they operated. Anyways, I remember going in there, and then the guy on the garnish was sick that day. So Gerard was like, you're going to do service tonight. And I fucking shat myself. I was like, excuse me, what? Me, Pong Chan Russell, this fucking kid from fucking Pak Panang, who's only been cooking for like a year and a half, you want me to do a section in a 1 Michelin star restaurant? Are you fucking crazy or what? What if I fuck up? What if I burn it? What if I overcook the risotto? Obviously, as always, my reply was, we chef. Name of the podcast, by the way. So that was it. I went there, I helped with prep, and then before I knew it, 4:30 when we had family meal, I was put on a station. And I can tell you, I had never been so scared in my entire fucking life. I treated that service. I still remember it. Gerard, notoriously, because Carlos worked under Gerard, so notoriously, he had a bit of a reputation at the time. He's mellowed down a lot to be quite ill-tempered. He knows how to raise his voice, and yeah, his reputation was. I was on a section for the first time, didn't really know the dishes, and yeah, I remember doing service that day, and after a year and a half, 2 years, a year and a half of self-doubt, that was the first time that I was like, wow, this is fine dining. Because that was my first time doing fine dining. The Priory Bay, even though we did do fine dining, it wasn't like a real fine dining. It was like refined bistro food. It was still, we had a fine dining restaurant, which is called The Island. But that service at Roussillon was the first time that I really got into the world of fine dining and what it meant and what it was. And, the precisions, the way the vegetables were cut, the way that they were cooked. It was exactly what we did at the Priory Bay. Just the ingredients were a lot better. And the precisions in cooking was just a lot smaller. There was a lot smaller detail. And that was where my nature of being obsessed, I would call it a nerdy thing. I when I like something, I get curious and then I obsess over it. But the problem with me is I obsess over it and then I get bored. Cooking has only been the only obsession I've had in life that I've stuck with. So like during COVID, I brought a very expensive camera, the one you guys are filming on now. And I think I've used it like 5 times. So cooking was the only thing that I've been obsessed with, that I've stuck to. And so that was a whole new world to me, the world of fine dining. And it was the obsessions to make things as good as possible, as refined as possible. And the thing that I love about fine dining, and maybe the thing that people hate, is that it's the time. I feel like the difference between a fine dining restaurant and a casual restaurant, especially in 2024, is the time that people put into it. Whether the way that it looks, or the way that it tastes, or the execution or whatever, it's time. When I first started out in fine dining, or fine dining a long time ago, it was almost like a genre of excellence. Casual restaurant scene wasn't really a thing back then. And to eat really, really good quality food, you need to eat in a fine dining restaurant. Like in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, when I first started cooking. It isn't what it is now. The level of knowledge of cooking was really limited. It wasn't shared. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have social media. iPhone wasn't even out when I think the first one did come out when I was already started working. But this whole world that you see now, it didn't exist back in the day. And fine dining restaurants were the genre of excellence. That's how I viewed it anyways. The casual restaurants, it was just at the beginning of gastronomy, the casual food scene. And, knowledge was very limited then. You had to share, you had to work somewhere to really know how to cook something. It's not now. Now you can fucking ChatGPT recipes. You can look at cookbooks. You can ask chefs who have staging. Staging didn't exist then. There was only like 6 restaurants in the world that accepted stages. Stages was even though it's a French word and being means apprentice, it was like the culture of knowledge wasn't what it is now. So that obsession of making things the best that it could be was something that I fell in love with, and it was something that really, really resonated with me. And it was just like the more things were harder to make, the more I was obsessed with it. So that's why I fell in love with fine dining, and that's why I still do it today. That same passion of, I hate it when you go to a fine dining restaurant and then you eat something and then you're disappointed. Even for me, because if you can do that at home, what's the fucking point? Or if you can even do that in a casual restaurant, what's the point? And I feel like you should be able to do something and give it so much time that people can't replicate it unless you went to a fine dining restaurant. And that's what I feel like it's what people pay for. Essentially it's what people pay for. Because you can go to a casual restaurant and you can have the best ingredients and the same. And some casual restaurants even have better ingredients than fine dining restaurants. And then you can have the same cooking techniques, because now techniques is shared. It's like, cooking techniques it's nothing that special. You can make spherification in a casual restaurant, in a fine dining restaurant nowadays. You can sous vide or you brine your proteins and you cook them at a retained moisture at the highest possible moisture retention. You can do that in a casual and a fine dining restaurant. So what is the difference? And for me, it's just everything else. The time, the detail, the micro, 1%. And it really translates. I really do believe that it translates. If you take a casual restaurant now in any big city and you classify that as a fine dining restaurant 20 years ago, it would probably be a very, very, very good fine dining restaurant. But the world has evolved. Knowledge has been more shared. The prestige and exclusivity of cooking techniques has been diluted because people know more. You can do any of the garnishes and elements of a fine dining restaurant on YouTube nowadays with all the channels that they have. So what does it mean nowadays? And for me, that is it. Time. Time is really the only major thing that differentiates between a really, really good casual restaurant and a good fine dining restaurant. I have so much more. I think that for the first episode, This is where we are. That's my intro. That's a bit of my childhood, a lot of my first kitchen job, because that has been instrumental to how I think, how I work, how I see things, and then also how I got into fine dining. And this is where we are now. Obviously, the rest of my life, I'll be here for 2 days if I talk about everything. But yeah, it'll come up here and then in other episodes. I think that first service in Roussillon was the first time that I feel like it wasn't that I belonged anymore. It was like almost a calling. I needed to do fine dining. I needed to explore it. I needed to explore 1-star, 2-star, 3-star. It was a new obsession. I had an obsession with working. I had an obsession with working, the camaraderie of working culture, obsession with cooking, which was working in the kitchen, in the Prairie Bay. But then my obsession with fine dining was at Roussillon, even though my first job was at Gautier Soho. So that is, I think, where we'll end the podcast today. I really don't know where this will go. I might do 1 episode, 2 episodes, get bored, get distracted, and stop. I might do 1 episode, 2 episodes, no one's there, and I'm like, why am I still doing this? Or, who knows? It might take traction. It might have a few followers. It might have a few chefs, non-chefs, chefs, or any F&B people. It might have some students, international students who went through what I went through and are not sure what they want to do. And it might have veterans, people beyond my years who are seeing this. At the end of the day, as always, it's a very selfish thing that I'm doing, because I'm doing this podcast for me. It's a journal for me. It's an anchor for my mind. It's a good anchor. It's a creative outlet, as you will. I wouldn't say creative. It was more like a emotional, thoughtful outlet that I have for myself, more than anything else. And I really do think it's going to be very, very different to the other podcasts. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm definitely not here to fucking sell you a cooking course or my fucking cookbook or whatever. I'm here to sit down with people that I admire, people that I respect, people that I want to learn from, and acquire a few hours of their precious time. Sit down with them, talk with them, unscripted, raw, completely honest, not planned, and just ask them questions that I want to ask. And I just want to document it all and then share with you guys. And that's it. We'll see where it goes. We'll see, we'll see how many people I piss off along the way, my wife included. And, at the end of the day, I think Chris was onto something. Even though I'm not doing it for him and I'm not trying to use his death as a way to make this or promote this at all. It's just something that, it's one of those things that I wish I probably had done sooner. I'm in a place in my life, luckily enough, to be able to do it. Very grateful for that, to be able to have the platform to do it, to have support from, my business partners, my wife, Modal, to be able to step into this world. I do not want to be a content creator. I could not give 2 fucks about fame. I do not want to be famous. I do not want to grow my followers. I could not give 2 fucks about being a celebrity or an influencer. All I want is a creative space where I can go and think about my thoughts out loud with people, share with it, converse it, learn from it. And that's it. That's really, really, really it. Have a few laughs along the way, joke about my life along the way, poke fun at people along the way, poke at myself mostly along the way. And I'm so thankful that I think it'll be so much fun. Genuinely, the word fun is something that we do not have enough of these days. And I think it'll be so much fun to see where this journey takes me, to see where it takes you. Subscribe. I'm told that I need to say that because otherwise it would be pointless. So out of formality, subscribe. Out of formality, please share. With those that you think that you think that would be beneficial. Out of formality, tell your friends about it, tell your families. But don't tell too many people, please. It's it could be our own little secret. It could be our own little club. And out of formality, thank you so much for watching. I know that out of everything else, the most precious thing you guys are giving me is your time. Your time to actually sit through this in both long form and short form content. And I know that there's a lot of content out there, and I know that the last thing someone should be is a content consumer. But I really, really want to put a fresh spin on all this, And hopefully, more than anything else, I want people to know that it's okay not to be okay. Know that the struggles you face will only be temporarily. Know that the self-doubts that you may have or may not have will come and go. And know that, life's too short to not live it. That is really the only biggest risk. And for me, the reason I started this podcast is because I didn't do it earlier. The risk I had, what people would think, when Chris asked me to do about it like 8 months ago, like, oh, but am I really going to put myself out there as a Michelin star chef, owner, whatever that tag, like the job doesn't define me. I am so much more than just what I do for a living. But at the end of the day, life is too short not to do the things that you want to do. And this podcast intrinsically is something that I want to do for me. Anyways, thank you so much, guys. I hope you all have a great day. I really don't know where this will take us. Thank you so much for those who have stayed on. I highly doubt there'll be any, maybe except my mom or my sister, Celine, that I would have watched it all the way to the end. But if you have, really, really appreciate. Let me know in the comments, who I should invite on. It could be anyone. It doesn't have to be chefs, but I will start off as chefs. I will start off with the area that I know that I can do, that I'm already connected in, that I have a foot in already. And we'll see from there.